Okay. All right. Just a minute here.
I have an old cell number for Tanya,
Oh, okay.
because we tried to get her Regina. Let me just, should I put it in the chat for you, Marjorie? Or
We probably shouldn't post it, I guess.
no, but just to Margie.
Oh, yeah. You could do it. Yeah. Just do a direct message to her.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So today we are 30 days, one day less, short of a month since JWST was launched on Christmas Day. And today was an important milestone. JWST has gone into an orbit around L2, and the second Lagrangian point. And this is a schematic which shows which depicts where JWST has been in the last month and where it's going now. Each of these orbits, which is actually larger than the orbit of the moon around the Earth, takes 180 days. While they look like circles, the actual orbit itself, I think, is actually shaped more like a potato chip. Anyway, virtually all of the energy that JWST needed to get into this trajectory had been given before. There was a by the Ariane rocket, and then I think there was a very small mid-course correction, and apparently they only they had some fuel set aside to do course corrections and this final burn to get into orbit today, and they wound up only using a third of it. So that was that spoke very well for the especially the Ariane rocket that launched it 30 days ago. Just late this afternoon, I snagged this slide from Heidi Hamel, who's one of the big experimenters. She's a planetary astronomer, and this the slide that takes up most of this shows what's going to be going on during this upcoming orbit, the next 6 months, and so you can see that there's actually a fair bit of activity going on. And some of the timing here is dictated by the fact that the instruments need to be cooled down even further than they are right now. Excuse me, most of the instruments are going to be operating at about 35 Kelvin, but I think there's one MIRI, which I think actually has a cooler built into it or around it, so that it will operate at only 7 Kelvin. But anyway, it's going to take some time for these to cool off. It's also a matter of importance to the mirrors, because the mirrors have been designed to be their correct shape at the operating temperature, which is very low, rather than what they were when they were launched. So you can see here going around this orbit that a good chunk of it is going to be dealt with getting the telescope up and running. And then the latter half will be dedicated to the individual instruments. And you can see that they, all our astrophotographer friends here will be interested to see the little thing in the middle there about them stacking images. So they're talking about getting different images from each of the 18 segments of the main mirror, and then as time goes on, bringing them closer together. But the aiming is so precise, and the placement of the mirrors is that we're talking about units of angstroms and things like that to do that. Now, at the press conference today, some of the scientists who work on Webb announced that they've actually chosen a star that they are going to aim at to take their first images during the next 6 months. And so one of the reporters there found the star on his on the app on his phone and posted it. So I've posted it here. So you can see it's in Ursa Major, near Ursa Major, HD 84406, and apparently it can be found with binoculars. It's a star in a relatively empty part of space, and of course that's not too far away from where the first Hubble Deep Field was shot. And but it's also in a part of the sky where the James Webb Telescope can be aimed at any part of the year. There's a lot of the sky that it can only look at certain parts of the year because of the limitations of movement in its orbit. It can't. It always has to keep its sunshade between the telescope and the sun, the moon, and the Earth. So there's limitations on how it can move at any given time. But that part of the universe, they can look at it pretty well anytime they want. So that's another reason why they chose that star. So there was a lot of toing and froing with the media about, well, are you going to be releasing anything before the 6-month anniversary of the launch, which is what they're targeting to have their first images of interest and scientific interest, but public release interest. That's the date they're shooting for to release this stuff. And there was some of the answers are a little ambiguous, but I'm not holding my breath. If for some reason they found something that was of special importance, they might release it early. But I think we should wait for or not expect that much until late June. So and this is another slide I snagged just a couple of hours ago. This shows the pattern of cooling in various parts of the telescope. Now this is done according to a study that they did about 2 years ago. So, but apparently so far the cooling has gone pretty close to the expected values. Anyway, the cooling is actually an important part of the whole thing. And as you can see, we're just 30 days out from the launch, and so there's still a lot of work to be done. I think this thick green thing here is actually the cooler that's attached to Miri, I believe, that cools it down even further than what it would do with the measures they've taken right now. So anyway, those that's basically what I found today. So we're kind of into this period now. It's in the right trajectory. There was a big celebration a couple of weeks ago when the deployment was completed, and that was a very difficult and complicated thing. We saw a couple of shots from the control center today, and it was much calmer because I don't think there was a lot of anxiety about this burn today. It was only about a 5-minute burn, which isn't very long. So I think they were pretty confident that that was going to be successful, and it was. So I think I'll leave it there.
Chris, I think Randy had a question and Brian had a question.
Yes, and by the way, I think it was Randy had a really good film that he found about some of the issues around James Webb, and I would recommend it. Or was I wrong? Was it somebody else? I'm sorry. I'm thinking about James Webb and not who did what. But
I don't remember if I sent something last week. I can look.
oh no, yeah, no, I'm wrong. Just I'll find it and I'll post it up in a
Okay,
second.
but I'd like to show a couple of pictures appropriate to that point that you can
I've stopped sharing.
you can always see. So so because of having to avoid the sun, the telescope can spin around the axis, the sun telescope axis, 360 degrees, but it can tilt between this 85-degree and 135 degrees. And so that little, 5 degrees around here means that regardless of where it is in its orbit, there's that 5-degree, or it might be 10-degree place where you can, 365 days a year, you can see the same thing. And so, Chris, that star that you pointed must have been within one of these two. And that I really find that cool. When you see they called it the field of regard as it spins around, a lot of it, you just have a very short time each year to be able to image certain parts. But as you get towards the pole to the ecliptic, then you get these areas which can be seen more and more. And that's just because of that. They've made the shield big enough that you can tilt it 5 degrees past, flat.
That's right. The continuous viewing zone, and that was also the case with Hubble. That was why they chose that area up there to do the deep field all those years ago. And I apologize. It was Reg who sent me that great film, and I put the link up on the chat. So thanks very much, Reg.
And Brian, did you still have a question for Chris?
Yeah, it was. Is it visible? Can we see Webb via telescope? If not our amateur telescopes, can NASA view Webb from Earth via telescope? The reflectors, I'm assuming.
I know that amateurs we're following Webb on the way out. And I've seen a few, shots. I haven't seen any recently, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't. I mean, it's a gigantic object, and of course it's shiny, but it's now a hell of a distance away now. It's at least 4 times as far away as the moon is. So I'll keep an eye out, and if I see any reports, I'll mention them.
Thank you.
Sounds good. I guess we are still waiting for Tanya, but I think there may be some other people that might want to speak tonight. John, did you have anything to say about your activities, what you've been doing? And I know Dave had some picture that he reprocessed, and I know Brock has one too.
I know there are, I'm David, I know there are some people here who are actually guests of mine who are here specifically for Tanya. And there's just nothing from Tanya. There's nothing on the Gmail. I left her a phone message. There's nothing on her phone. There's nothing on my email. There's nothing. So,
but you did get a reply this evening that she didn't have the link, right? Or
yes, but interestingly, on the Gmail, her reply is 11 hours ago, and saying she didn't get a link. And I checked my Gmail VP2 account twice today, and there was nothing there.
Interesting.
And suddenly this email has shown up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I haven't got any response to the tweet, so who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. Well, hopefully everything is okay with her. Yeah, we'll just carry on until something happens. So, John, did you want to say anything? Or I know David had some possible things to show tonight. I can't hear you, John.
I don't really have anything, David. I did go out 2 nights ago and discovered that I'm still capable of making all the mistakes I used to make. So I didn't get anything useful.
Okay. All right. I know how that
I could record all of the mistakes I made, but they would fill up the whole evening. So
okay, I won't put you on the spot then. David, how about you? I don't know if David can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. You couldn't hear me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a reminder that the astrophotography SIG meeting is Wednesday.
Right.
So anyone needs a link. Welcome anyone who's interested in astrophotography.
Yeah, I wanted to thank John for all the work he did in the past year with the astrophotography group. Kudos to you, and thank you, David, for sort of taking over the chair of that SIG.
Well, I certainly can't fill John's shoes, so see how it goes.
Yeah. All right.
David, if there's time going begging, I could show you something that's not astronomy related, but
okay.
It's a bit of a passion with me lately. Maybe I'll just share the screen for a few minutes, and if our guest comes along, just boot me off right away.
All right.
Okay, you should be able to see a screen with a whole bunch of little black and white images. What I want to show you is right here. I've been doing photography in black and white lately, just for the fun of it. And because it's something I used to do when I had a darkroom when I was a kid. And I just really liked it. But I've been doing, I think some of you have seen a black and white image I did of the Plaska not so long ago. but I'm also doing black and white images of people and scenery and whatever. Just a minute, this is not behaving the way it's supposed to. There. So I'll just run through some of these, and if you have questions, you can ask me. But one of the things that is very different about black and white images is that you have a lot more control of the tones than you have in a color image. If you did the same kind of things with a color image that I've done with these tones, it would look bizarre.
Yeah, John, you know, some remark that kind of ties it into astronomy. I'm a big fan of black and white astrophotos, actually. I don't know if you've done much perusing in the old catalogs, but stuff that came from the Lick Observatory, for instance. Just phenomenal work. And I actually have a couple of old books from old collections, and the at a time when we didn't know about galaxies, you know, like when
Right.
the Andromeda galaxy was actually Andromeda Nebula. Those black and white images are just absolutely amazing.
They really are. I visited the Lick Observatory at one time, and yes, their images were what got me excited about astrophotography.
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't mind seeing more things that have to do with luminosity solely as opposed to color, because I think
Right.
it does give us lots of information about form and shape in the universe.
It does.
But yeah, black and white, certainly my first love as a photographer.
This is an interesting one. I won't say much about many of these, but I had my camera over my shoulder and I was walking down Douglas Street. And this fellow was sitting down, just watching things go by. He was sitting up against a building, and he saw my camera. He said, "What are you doing with that camera?" And I said, "Well, I just have it to take pictures if I see anything interesting." He says, "Why don't you take my picture?" So I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And he had a little bit of a twinkle in his eye, and really interesting,
you know,
character.
You often don't get that offer, and I'm certainly in this day and age, I'm very loath to even ask anybody.
That's right.
People are so
I'd actually seen him, and I thought I'd like to ask him, but I didn't know if I should.
Yeah.
And I don't like taking pictures of people unless they agree.
Right.
But he wanted this picture taken. And I've been trying to find him since to give him a copy of it. And I've talked to people who've seen him, but I haven't managed to connect.
Oh.
Would Our Place know where he, like something like Our Place or the Dandelion Society?
I'm sorry, my hearing isn't so good, and I didn't get
Sorry,
that.
I said it could be from Our Place or the Dandelion Society.
Oh,
if he's
yeah, we've tried that,
okay.
but I just haven't connected with him.
Oh, it's beautiful. It really
People
is.
know he's around.
Okay.
These guys didn't mind having their picture taken.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And this is Wendy. I can take her picture without her minding.
Where is that, John?
That's at the painted.
Oh, okay.
Painted pony.
Is this a color converted to black and white?
All of these are color to start
okay.
with.
All right.
Well,
Yeah,
almost all of them.
I'll tell you, it's a real art, the actual conversion, because you have to choose what colors map to what tones.
Yeah. One that as you can see, I've just taken pictures of all kinds of different things and picked out ones, but those are just some of the best that I thought I'd show.
No, very nice, John. That's something that all astronomers can do during this time period, right?
I'll show you one more picture. If you can make the view so that the speaker shows up so that I'm big on your screen,
Yeah, I can
then,
spot.
then
that
you'll
from-
see this picture all right. See if you can recognize it. Oh, it doesn't show up very there. You recognize that lady?
Oh.
It's Marlene Dietrich, and she posed for me.
Oh, wow.
No kidding.
How long ago was that?
It was 1968
Ah,
Wow.
Where was that?
in Heathrow Airport.
Cool.
She was in a scrum of reporters, and I could see the scrum. I couldn't see her. I didn't know who it was. And then as the scrum kind of broke up, she came walking out. And I was standing there with my camera, and she sort of stopped thinking, probably thinking I was a reporter, and posed for me, and I clicked. If you see the picture close up, you'll see kind of a strange expression on her face, as though she was just suddenly realizing, oh, this is some amateur jerk.
so did you fess up or did you just run?
No, I took the picture and she walked on. She didn't stop to talk to me. She just, yeah.
John,
There you
can you explain the process of taking color pictures and making them black and white? Is that a difficult task?
It's not difficult. You need to have some processing software that lets you look at the different shades or the different color tones and then process them separately. And the easy way to do that is with the thing that comes with Lightroom or Photoshop called Adobe Camera Raw. It does it really easily, but there's lots of other color processing stuff that will let you do it.
Yeah, the simplest ones actually just have a black and white setting, and you just push the button, and you can do.
You can do that. I can set my camera to black and white, which sometimes helps me visualize what I'm doing better. But you're still just taking the regular raw image, and you've got to do a lot of processing to get the tones to really jump out at you.
Of course, the grand irony is that all digital cameras are shooting in black and white anyway, and then the manufacturers are telling you what color they want them to be in, and then you're converting that color to black and white.
Yeah,
I was kind of fortunate. I actually had a course in black and white film development, from a fellow named Jim Dow, who had been a student of Ansel Adams. And he was a good enough student that Adams allowed him to print, make prints from Ansel Adams negatives. And if they were good enough, Ansel Adams would sign them. He did that with just a few of his students. So this guy was quite good. And I learned a lot about black and white photography from him.
Yeah, it's a whole art.
I used to do quite a bit of it, but I'm just getting back into it now.
Yeah, it's lovely.
If anybody's ever traveling down the California coast, the northern part of the California coast, there's a small town called Gualala, which is near a place called Sea Ranch, which is where Ansel photographed quite a lot. And in the town of Gualala, there's a small gallery called the Allender Gallery, which is run by Jim and Mary Allender. They worked with Ansel quite a lot, but they also wrote the biography of Ansel Adams. And if you go into their gallery, you can actually look at some prints that they made for Ansel at the time. And it's fascinating because they've actually, one of the things that you can see in there, if I can find it online, I'll send it to the group, but there's one of the very famous pictures that Ansel did was called Moonrise over Hernandez. And if you look at the finished print of that versus a contact print, for anybody that's not familiar with contact prints are when you literally put the negative on top of the paper and expose, so you're not doing any tricks to it in black and white photography. The difference between the contact print and the finish print is so extraordinary. It's hard to believe that it's the same picture.
Yeah, I was when I was in Arizona, I was at the I wish I could remember the exact photography institute it was, but it was on the campus of the University of Arizona, and they house much of his work actually. And when I was there, they actually had a contact print with all his annotations for the printing process. So it was so stunning. And I totally agree with you. There's some images which don't look anything like the original negative. Like they were played like a musical score. Like he did everything to that image to create that image.
Yeah. And to the non-initiated, the way they do that is with a lot of hand waving and dodging and burning.
Yes.
So it's a very analog process. It's quite magical that it actually works. And I've heard a lot about that moonshot you mentioned, highly dodged and burned. So it's not digital processing, it's analog processing.
Yeah.
Well, David just mentioned, I mean, one of the things that Ansel's famous for saying was that the negative was the score and the print was his performance of it.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. That's a good way of putting it.
And, you know, it's not very different for astrophotographers. I think we get a lot of data and then we create what we create of it, right? I mean, there's a lot of processing that is really choice, right? There's no quote correct way of doing things. I mean, there are systems that allow us to make it as quote as true to life as possible, but in the end, it becomes what you choose.
There's going back to the black and white stuff that's we're talking about. John was talking about processing apps and stuff like that. If you're really interested in doing black and white, it's not a trivial price. I'm just looking online. It's about $140. There's a company called DxO who make a variety of different processing applications, and one of the ones they make is called FilmPack. And one of the things about FilmPack is it allows you to very quickly emulate a film stock look, which is really interesting because you can go through, you know, with the same picture, you can just click on lots of different film stocks and see how that film stock would have represented those colors on the substrate of film. It's called FilmPack, and it's a fascinating way to get to a particular look. Like for anybody that's worked in photography during the film era, you knew the film stocks that you were going to choose. You know, you were making that decision before you even put it in the camera. And it's interesting for anybody who hasn't done that to put it through an application like that and just see how different, you know, Tri-X looks to T-Max, looks to FP4, looks to HP5, whatever.
Absolutely. There's other tools as well. I actually use one from Alien Skin. The company's not called Alien Skin anymore, but they have film stock replication as well. And I often do that if I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic because my film was Tri-X, right? And I shot always with Tri-X, but I shot with really dilute development. So my stuff was mostly gray with very little black. That was just a stylistic choice. And yeah, it's nostalgia for me, but it could be discovery for new people.
I've still got some Tri-X up in the garage, David.
When would you use sepia?
Say again?
When would you use sepia instead of black and white?
Well, sepia is just a dyeing process, same as selenium toning. It's just a toning process that you use afterwards.
It's just a combination of paper and chemicals after the fact.
Yeah, and there's lots of processes. There's even gold processes. Like when I was studying at the Banff Center, we did a number of different things. In those days, we used kind of heavy metal kind of stuff. So we used selenium to tone the silver, basically just to temper the silver and make it more archival. But there's tons of stuff in the analog world.
So
my particular
is shooting color film, usually Fuji color, and then rephotographing it digitally and using it, processing it digitally like that. I've got a macro lens that lets me do a 1-to-1 onto a full frame. So I'm basically just transferring the 35mm frame into a 35mm size sensor, and it's very interesting. You know, you can definitely see the different, especially the different color film stocks require totally different treatments.
Yeah. Well, of course, the other thing with color film stocks is that the color of the substrate itself on the negative was different from film to film. So it's all needed lots of different stuff.
Mike Webb, what did you have there?
I think if you want to spend less than $100, you can.
Oh, right. That's a
you can
classic.
buy Ansel Adams set, and I think there's 3. There's the camera, I can't read it backwards now.
Yeah, that's the eponymous publications for sure, where he describes his famous zone system, of course.
Good old zone system.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, you know, as we're kind of bouncing around here tonight, there's one thought that I had that it would be wonderful to discuss here in this venue. Lauri and I on the Saturday night FDAO Star Party, we had a segment at the very end where we were talking about maybe morphing the EAA session that we often had with images. Not that we're trying to get rid of imagery, but we were trying to maybe, I don't know, to kind of expand our understanding of observation and recording. So my plan with that series is to still continue doing astrophotography, but to sort of add in things like observation and sketching. So I just wondered what people's feelings were about that for themselves, like even within Victoria Center. Is there an appetite for that? Like, do we want to maybe try some other ways of recording, other ways of observation? What do you think?
I would be very interested in doing sketching. It's something that I've practiced with, but of course, you know, everybody's their own worst critic. So I look at what I've got and think it looks absolutely horrible. But if we had some sort of circle of people who could, you know, prompt and suggest to basically support you doing that.
Well, you know, there's no reason why we couldn't have a sketching SIG as well. I don't know who would be interested, but certainly let us know if you want to do that. You know, this whole idea of scientific illustration is a very important one in science. I think we often forget that. Like before there were cameras, there was pencils and paper, right? Or writing implements and paper.
Well, even to this day, there's a big advantage to doing paintings. Watercolor paintings actually are a much more accurate way of recording color-based imagery than any of the photography, because that changes with the film stock and the light.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a very famous article. I wish I could dig it up right now, but when they were photographing eclipses at the turn of the last century, there were a lot of people saying, forget the film. I mean, it's okay, but we can show way more detail with sketching, and that's what they did. So a lot of the coverage of the really early eclipses were actually done by hand. They were done by sketches. Brenda, you have a question?
I'm super interested in the sketching.
Oh, okay, cool.
Really in for that. I just went out and got my sketchbook
okay,
to start. And so I'm really, you know, I'm not really clear how to proceed, but I would love to do it.
Yeah, you know, there's many different levels of sketching as well. I'd like to have people understand that.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when all we do is just want to collect information. So it doesn't even have to be a work of art. You know, often when I record conjunctions that I see just on the spur of the moment, I'll just take a piece of paper and just draw a line for the horizon and just put a dot where I saw the planets, right? And you can certainly do that. That's perfectly valid. Those are recollections of an event that you observed, right?
Yeah.
And from the point of view of observation and science, that's valid. Look at Galileo's material in Starry Messenger, and you'll see he basically just used symbology, like little stylized figures to show the position of objects. That's all he did.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot more to it than I realize at the moment, but it'd be really interesting to explore that and with other people too.
So would it be useful to just have some very introductory, maybe seminars that have to do with tooling, like tools and paper and techniques and things like that?
It would be interesting to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's
And
certainly a lot
an
of stuff.
opportunity to compare notes and.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff online, and I would point you there as well.
Sure.
But there's no wrong way of doing this, and there's no reason why we couldn't have our own circle in the form of a SIG where we looked at things that we did and asked for commentary.
Great, thanks.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Brock, are you still here?
Yeah,
Brock.
I'm here.
Brock, can you give us a peek at your Orion shot? I thought that was kind of cool. You showed that on Saturday night.
Sure. Yeah. I'll pull it up.
Now, I find it hard to believe that there were any clear spots in the last couple of weeks.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that was Thursday night, or can't remember now. A few nights ago.
Okay.
But managed to sneak in pretty much an entire night. Just a couple lost frames for. It wasn't a long shot because it went behind some trees. It wasn't so much the weather that killed me; it was a tree.
Okay.
So about 2/3 of the way through my collection of subs, I started seeing branches going by.
Okay.
And so, but,
you weren't tempted to retouch them?
Yeah, the tracking or the guiding got a little messed up during those periods as well. So
yeah. So just for the audience, this is considered wide field, wouldn't you say, Brock?
yeah, it's pretty wide. It's a 400 millimeter.
Yeah.
Although this is cropped, so this is probably more like what you'd get if you had a 600 millimeter lens. But yeah, it's reasonably wide. I've done one with my Schmidt Castle grain, and it basically was just essentially the center here. But this was a nicer view.
Yeah, I actually really like the effect of the cloud, which is, I guess, essentially the reflection nebula here, right?
Yeah.
We're basically having the stars kind of light up the cloud material.
It's a bit of a testament to the newer equipment, the fact that I can still see the not the triangulum, the trapezium,
right,
which are these cluster of stars in the center. And yet it's still a single exposure. I didn't do any HDR compositing or anything like that. So but it's got enough dynamic range to pick up some reasonably faint stuff. So
it's a 14-bit camera, isn't it? So it should have inherently
16-bit maybe.
Oh, 16. Okay. Well, 14, well, more than 12 anyways.
Yeah.
More than 12.
It's got a lot of depth. And this was at gain 0 because I was thinking that with the trapezium, I wanted to get as much headroom as I could.
Yeah, no, very nice. You know, the Orion Nebula is such a classic object. And I'll tell you the reason why I really love it. It's you've got this kind of amazing kind of web material, like with the diffusion nebula. And the other thing I really like is Running Man, which you see there too. And Running Man is very cool.
Yeah, it's this one here.
Yeah, people often sort of crop into that, and they just show essentially the Running Man.
I hope to get more time on it, but we'll see. Forecast has still got a couple days before it goes gross. So
yeah, I mean, lots of challenges in an image like this. One of the things for people that are beginning in astrophotography is there's a lot of challenge here. There's a lot of difference in terms of exposure, like for the bright stars, and then sort of keeping that kind of ephemeral look to the cloud, and as Brock was saying, not burning out the area where the trapezium is. Yeah, very nice, bro.
Thanks.
Chris, I saw you kind of poking around there. Did you have something else to say, Chris?
I do.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So this is something I'm not happy to be talking about. I'm very unhappy to be talking about it. This is about our missing calendars.
Oh, no.
So we had a very lengthy, or well, I wouldn't say lengthy, but the entire board meeting was taken up with the situation we've had with shipping. There's a whole bunch of things that happened. And I think in the case of our calendars, one of them being the lousy weather, we had late last year. Anyway, and Robin Foray is going to be sending a letter to the membership about this. I'm actually surprised he hasn't sent it already, but nothing running behind these days is surprising me anymore. But I was told at that meeting that they basically considered our calendars to be lost and that they were sending out another bunch, and that we were going to be informed about it. And I had expected Lauri, and I also asked for me to be copied on all this stuff to get more information about it. And that hasn't happened. But anyway, and frankly, I was hoping that the damn things would be here by now, the new ones. But anyway, that's what's going on, is that the calendars are missing in action, and that there should be some new ones coming out. I'm really pissed off about the whole thing, and
Chris, did this involve all calendars or just a few?
It involves the box of calendars that was sent to the Victoria Center.
Oh, so
I think
specifically us.
pretty well everybody else has got their calendars now. I think there was a couple of cases where it wasn't that long ago they got them, but as far as I know, pretty well all the shipping issues that we were having, all those things have been taken care of one way or another. But the big outstanding thing here is our box or boxes of calendars. So anyway.
Well, thanks for the info, Chris. At least we know.
Yeah, it's just incredible. When they said last week that's what happened, okay, that's fine. But they've sort of broken two promises to me to get more information about what's going on. So I actually expected Lauri to say something, and I was saying, well, did they get back to you? No. So anyway, here we go.
Do we know the shipper? Sometimes you can find them on a loading dock somewhere if you know the shipper.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. They just don't know where it is right now. Yeah, like somebody said, they got their handbook on Friday. Like a lot of us, I got my handbook before Christmas. So
yeah, I did too.
I was going to ask, is this all related to handbooks as well? Because I haven't seen a handbook either.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing involves handbooks. But what I'm talking about right now is the box of calendars that we're going to Victoria Center. So
I didn't say anything, Chris, because I've been saying the same thing now for 2.5 months, and I thought I'd be absolutely, inundated with hate mail. So I don't want to say anything.
I mean, this is just beyond embarrassing. I can't believe it.
Well, if they can
So,
at
so
least
Martin,
know.
you said you haven't got your handbook yet?
I haven't got a handbook, you know.
Me
That's why I was
either.
that's why I was asking if it was like, was it all on the same palette or what?
No, I
No.
imagine that was a different case, but yeah, you should,
Handbooks are individual shipments.
yeah,
The calendars were a deal where we ordered a bunch for this center and it was coming in one shipment, I would imagine.
yeah. So,
briefly?
yeah, you should probably contact national office about your handbook, and you know, I'm really sorry about that. I mean, one interesting situation that we were talking about the other day is that a bunch of shipments for the Maritimes got stuck on in the post office in Dieppe, New Brunswick, and part of the problems we've been having is that people are telling us that stuff's been shipped or that it's been moved, and it hasn't been, you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't think our calendars are out in Dieppe, New Brunswick, although I guess at this stage, nothing's going to surprise me.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe
that'll be the first image from Webb.
one of the miracles of the pandemic, I guess, with transporting things and shipping things.
Yeah.
Ken, did you?
Yes, I'm trying to interrupt here.
Okay.
Briefly about postal delivery.
Yes.
Talk to your postman. I did, and they gave me the number of the postal manager in Victoria.
Okay.
And I called that fellow, and he said, "Oh, the magazines are stuck in a pile, and we don't have anybody to sort them. We're short of staff." And he said, "Nobody will take the contract." And I asked him what that meant. And he said, "Well, we put that 3 or 4 hour slot up for bid from union members. They have to be in the postal union, and nobody bid it. So there they sit."
Okay. So it's kind of a labor shortage, I guess.
In this case, now he did not identify which things were involved, but he did say magazines essentially.
Okay.
See, the thing too is that this may not come anywhere near like Canada Post, right? Like it's a completely separate shipping company. Like we would do something like, you know, FedEx or something like that.
A courier or something.
A courier of some kind. And so I think that's probably what has happened is I think we probably would have gotten something or at least heard something had they been Canada Post, but this is well beyond that. So
we had a problem with our previous shipper. So and last year there was a whole bunch of stuff, these great big packages that went to the States. You know, there's people who sell our handbook down there or sell our, you know, various things that we produce in the States. And last year we had a really bad problem. So we changed them to this outfit that's kind of a broker. And they just, whoever can get it to the receiver first, that's who they would go with. So the first thing they did was ship these things to the States. Everything was great. Everybody was happy. And then then we started, you know, shipping the stuff around Canada. And, you know, we've had these problems. So anyway.
it's a good thing that there's 12 months in a year. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, if they don't arrive by the end of the month, then they should give everyone a refund, as far as I'm concerned.
Or some level of compensation, I guess.
And I agree with Joe, yeah.
Yeah, because at that point, you know, calendars are discounted 50% when you buy them in a store, starting in February.
Yeah, it's just, it's, you know.
Got my 2022 before Christmas, and it was not by post, it was by a carrier.
Yeah, they're all by courier.
It was in the van, and he gave it to me in person.
Yeah, that was the same with me. It came DHL actually before Christmas.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine too.
Weird.
Bill,
Yeah.
anything happening in your neighborhood? I know you were talking about looking at the moon for libational reasons.
Yeah, the moon wasn't visible that night.
Yeah.
But I
yeah.
did get 2 nights in sort of looking at asterisms off of Charles's.
Wasn't that a wonderful talk? That
It
was
was
an
pretty
amazing
good.
talk. Amazing talk. For those of you who weren't on the Star Party on Saturday, Charles Ennis has compiled, was it over 4,000 asterisms with kind of like cross-cultural kind of spin on it.
Well, it's 4,000 names for asterisms.
Names, yeah.
Like he went
4,800.
through,
Yeah.
he read through what 100 names, that one
Yeah.
sort of blurb, and it was 7 stars.
Yeah.
All different names from different cultures. So in what he's been doing, it's just going, and he broke his shoulder, so he was sort of stuck in a chair for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And that's why I quizzed him. I said, how did you put in 1,100 hours in 6 months? That's like 6 months at 8 hours a day. And he said, you have a lot of time when you break your shoulder. So he broke his shoulder and then had, surgery, and just had to sit there like this with his arm in a sling and not do anything. So he was one-handing on a keyboard. And
well, hopefully the rest of us don't have to do that for inspiration.
No.
I'm not going to.
and he's trapped on the Sunshine Coast, so he had nowhere to go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Leslie, you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I wanted to share my screen for a second because I wanted to raise another
please.
topic.
Please.
Let me see here. So hadn't known much about the Chinese Giant Solar Telescope, and somebody talked to me about it, but it looks like a very interesting instrument. Can you see this depiction?
I do.
Yeah. So it's in the form of a ring rather than a conventional mirror. Or at least this was the plan back in 2010. This is actually a paper from a decade ago. Paul Hickson, Professor Paul Hickson at UBC, is actually working on this instrument. And it occurs to me that he might be willing to give us an update on progress on it. And,
yeah, this is the first time I've heard of it. I've not heard of this actually at all.
Well, and there you go. That's exactly why I was interested, because I had know nothing about it. So I'm wondering, are others interested in the Chinese Giant Solar Telescope?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm just looking at the way it's configured, and I wouldn't have thought of a solar scope being like that. I've only really seen one solar scope, and that's the one down at Kit Peak, but it's quite a different configuration. It doesn't really look anything like this.
This is much larger than Kit Peaks, of course. This is,
Yes.
I think, an 8-meter scope. So it has the resolution of an 8-meter scope, but of course you don't need the light gathering power. So they just omitted the central part of the telescope, at least in this plan. Anyway, we could, well, maybe I should volunteer to try and see if Paul Hickson would be willing to give us a talk.
Would you take that on, Leslie?
Sure.
Oh, thank you.
Hickson is always doing interesting stuff. You remember that they had that great big Mercury telescope?
Whatever happened to that, Chris?
Well, it was Hickson who was behind that, at least unless I've lost my mind. That's my recollection. And
yeah, it was actually spun to get its curvature.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. I don't think
right.
it's going anymore, but anyway, he's the guy who could tell us, I think.
So David, when you were asking about different SIGs, I find a lot of interesting news on just different publications, and while James Webb has got the headlines, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on, like the Chinese telescope it would be kind of interesting if we had some sort of SIG where people would go and I don't have enough time to really research any of these things. They catch my eye, but I don't have time. But if we could divide and conquer and sort of, when we see interesting things like this.
That's not a bad idea. I mean, we often would maybe build a whole meeting around it, but I mean, we don't necessarily have to do that. I think maybe even compiling the list would be an activity, right?
Yeah.
Within a SIG, right? Just building a queue of these things that are interesting.
Well,
And maybe
rather than a
finding
SIG,
some.
why not just present it at Astro Cafe?
You could, this is what I'm saying. But if you want to compile a list, maybe that's what we start with. Let's compile a list.
Well, yeah, I can take that on if it would be of interest.
So that'd be great if you want to do that. And then people can send them on to you, and then we'll just have a kind of a master list of potential talks. Yeah, that sounds good.
I remember several years back reading about the spun mirror telescope, and the big drawback to that, it became you had to observe zenith.
Oh,
that's
that's
all you
right.
could see.
You have to look straight up, right?
Yeah,
that's for sure.
But if it was big enough, you could get fast enough exposures that you could do something practical with it.
Yeah, I guess there's been lots of telescopes which in theory seem interesting, but maybe not practical. Oh, actually, Dave, how's that telescope that you've been telling us about going in Edmonton?
I sent a note off to Roman day before yesterday, and I haven't heard back from him. I was expecting him to come back shortly with an update on where he's at.
Okay.
I had a couple other questions for him on. I know Gary was looking for some information on Greece for his telescope bearings. I was hoping Roman would get back to me before today, but I haven't heard back from him. I may give him a phone call.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear another report. No Edmonton photography stuff for today?
No, they've been in the deep freeze and snowed out.
Just like us.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I know I was talking to my friend in Edmonton Saturday when we were doing our fly tying thing, and he said he was going to finish his fly tying and then go spend the rest of the day chipping ice off the sidewalk.
Yeah, we have other things on our mind these days, right?
Yeah, we'll see Florin here someday in the RASC. His name's Florin Sabac, and Florin is a good fishing friend of mine back from Edmonton, but he's also currently the treasurer for the RASC Edmonton Center.
Oh, cool.
Back to the speaker topic, David.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, that's of great interest to me. And I know I keep a list of potential speakers myself, but the idea of having, other than a general call every few meetings for others to suggest speakers, I like the idea of doing it perhaps more regularly. I'm speaking of Nanaimo Astronomy, but possibly at RASC or at Astro Cafe, just every part of the program being any like really hotshot speakers what you'd like to have. And then who was it that said he was going to capture it? Dave, the ideas?
Yeah, David Ping, yeah.
Yeah, and then I really support the idea of having anything about activities in other countries, because when I talked about diversity in speakers at when we presented about Nanaimo astronomy to the FDAO, finding geographic diversity beyond North America. I mean, we've had some people from other places, but China, no, we've never had anything, even about Chinese, construction, for example. So with that ongoing list, David, you can be sorting that diversity aspect out, which I'm sure is a goal of your group. Our
Yeah,
group.
I think so. I mean, we've sort of talked a little bit casually about it, but you know, the thing that I've noticed since we've been on virtual mode for all this time during the pandemic is so much how at least my interest in astronomy has been widened by the globe, because there are so many things I'm involved in now which are outside of the center now. And I think that only enriches what we have here. When we see other modes of thinking, other activities that other people are doing. And yeah, it's actually in a way a wonderful time. It's not great for us to be living in a pandemic, but it's really opened up a lot of things, at least for me anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Janine,
Yeah.
have you got your handbook yet?
I just got it by courier last week.
Now, did you notice that the guest editorial is written by Pran, who
I did.
did a presentation, and she's an example of geographical diversity. You might want to comment on that.
Well, that's absolutely true. And we did invite some of the RASC Victoria members to come and hear Pran Vera. And I believe several of you did. Reg, you were there. Yeah, she's from, oh, escapes me, not Bosnia.
Kosovo.
Kosovo,
Oh,
right. And our astronomer emeritus, Bill Weller, had been following her on Facebook, and he said, "What about if I ask her to talk to us?" And sure enough, she said, "Sure." And a young woman who dreamt of being an astronomer in high school, and then just single-handedly created Kosovo Astronomy Outreach, and now has a group, and they're building a telescope in the main city. And it was actually just after Diane Bell had passed, and it was a wonderful, a heartening way to think of others carrying on, and younger generation, just that, the yin and the yang of our experience here. So yeah, and I don't know who got her to do the guest editorial, but it has her usual joie de vivre, joie d'astronomie.
Yeah, I was talking to Lauri today about Charles' talk, and how much of the asterism stuff was kind of like an essential metaphor to how much humanity is actually in astronomy. It is about us, right? It's not just the science, right? It's about us, like how we feel about the universe. It's very true.
Well, and the more indigenous astronomy I take in, even just glimpsing that different worldview where there's so much more integration and holism. The sky is not a separate thing, right. It's a part of the whole that we experience as humans. So I think that's said in another way, as you did, David.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing in a fractured society, right? So I don't know if there's any more stuff we want to talk about tonight. I guess we'll find out what happened with Tanya. So maybe we can reschedule or something like that. But I think, have we exhausted our talk for tonight, or is somebody else want to share
one
something?
One more thing I will mention.
Oh yeah, okay, yes.
Is and this is a happy thing. There was a big meteor hit in the interior BC.
I heard that on the news.
There was an item about it on the CBC National, right at the end of the show.
Yeah.
And our friend Malar Kendekar, who's from Prince George, who's also on our board now. They had him talking about it. So.
I'll have to catch that, because all I saw a bit of the news clip on CBC Gems, and they just showed a video of something from a Nest video cam, like somebody had on their house or something like that.
That's right.
Wow.
That's cool. Right. So
might hear more about that then. Yeah, as coming in. So.
Yeah. Oh, actually, before we go, Lauri, can you tell us a little bit about what's been going up at the center, like the work you and Calvin have been doing? And
well, I mean, we're still continuing to do school programs. It's still not open. The government still has not opened us, and we're we're just waiting, you know, and we're hoping that this summer we're going to be open again at some point. I keep saying that, and I've been keeping saying that for a year and a half, but it'll come eventually. But we still are very active doing school programs. And in fact, last week, the past 2 weeks, we've been doing grade 10s, grade 10 programs. And we actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We did 12 grade 10s, 12 grade 10 classes.
Wow.
In 2 weeks. And then, and this week we have got 3 classes that we're continuing to do. And Calvin is the kind of the main scheduler and gets things going. And then Sidhu and I are the people that are supporting Calvin to do these programs. And it's our kind of our one, besides our star parties that we're doing, it's our one main, connection with still what's going on within the schools. And it's still great to be able to do that. Sid and I actually did go to a school, like a real live school last week. And we're in front of little grade kindergartners and grade 1ers. And it was just fabulous to be in front of children again for just even a little bit. We were quite distanced. We had to keep our distance, and we weren't, we had to do it a bit differently, but boy, it was sure much fun.
Did you have like a regular class in a giant gymnasium or something?
It was in the gymnasium, and we had the kids in this giant gymnasium. Yeah, it was the thing. But it was just lovely. So I know everybody's, well, not everybody, but I mean, a lot of you are probably ready to get back and want to talk with other people and say hi to everybody, and it was really quite nice. So, but we're not doing that on an ongoing basis at all, because we don't want to get ourselves in any trouble with being too close to too many people. But it was a real treat to do that. But anyway, that's what's going on. Unfortunately, we did not get the NSERC grant that we wanted to get. But in fact, I've been hearing from people in various places around Canada with fabulous big programs, and they didn't get anything from NSERC either. I mean, they were looking at big 3-year programs with $100,000, that they'd gotten before on other years, and they didn't get anything this year. So I don't know whether there's maybe not as much money like to go around. Anyway, we'll still continue to work on our program that we want to do for quality lighting and looking at how we view the sky in more polluted areas and things. We'll still try to do that, but we'll have to do it on a much more local basis rather than looking something else. Yeah. So
for sure.
It's just a shame, but that's
it's no reflection on us. It's just the time, I guess.
I believe so. When other big organizations that normally get funded didn't get funded, then that there's something else going on there.
Lauri, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I got a tour of the Shawnigan Lake Private School Observatory the other day.
Oh, did you? Oh, great.
Quite amazing. Do you have any links to them?
Yes, we absolutely do. We've had them here. We've had him talk to the FDAO.
Well,
we were up in Nanaimo.
Yeah, on astronomy days, usually they were part of the community.
He's there. He's there. I'm just wondering if Lauri, you were linked to him any other way. Okay, good, great, glad to hear it.
Yeah, we haven't done anything in the past little bit, but yes, I certainly know of the gentleman, and Janine knows him as well. So yeah.
Yeah, what was cool when we asked Nigel to present to us last year, because we had him at Astro Cafe, he actually turned it completely over to one of his star students. And he was there as an attendee, but she was the speaker, and really her goal is to become a guide at a National Dark Sky Preserve. So she's and she taught herself Pix and Sight and astrophotography, and all of our astrophotographers were kind of jaw dropping. But it was great to see that, speaking of diversity, just him highlighting her rather than
I think that's a good thing for us to do, is sort of like senior citizens of a
Yeah.
center, I guess. But it is so for us to sort of put forward new people, right?
That's a forbidden phrase in this club there, David.
Okay, strike that.
Take that off the recording. Yeah. No.
Bill, before we leave, same old with Pearson. Things are kind of static and.
None of them are there.
Oh.
I was out there a couple of times over the last few weeks, because that's where I found the cordyceps. And I went by to see Mark again, and none of the kids he's teaching from up at the observatory, so he's isolating.
Yeah.
And at Christmas, they sent all the Canadian kids home.
Oh.
And because they're online, and the kids who are from away, they're essentially in jail. So they're only allowed to associate with the students that are in their house. Like there's a bunch of dorm houses. Yeah. And so they can only associate with students in their house, and they can only go out together. So they're in solitary confinement. They get out for 2 hours a day per house. Wow. To go outside and roam around. And they can't associate with any of the other kids that are there. It's worse than it was last year. I don't know, maybe they'll slacken it up a bit. But last year they were running just like a school and isolated the whole school off, and then everybody was there, right? And I'd go out there and I'd be up at the observatory, and the kids were just doing their normal student thing. They'd come wandering by and completely ignore the fact that they were supposed to stay away from me. And what you doing? And shine a flashlight in my eyes and stuff like that. But and I just say to them with my hood over my eyes, I'd say, you guys need to just leave so you don't get in trouble with being in contact with an off-site person, right? Because then they would get told to stay in their house for 2 weeks, but now they're just like, they're in jail. It's kind of weird, but they're so paranoid that if they have to close the school, that it jeopardizes their funding, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know what's happening around our communities. So, yeah, thanks everybody. I'm sorry we had to pivot tonight, but we still filled the time. So it was good to see everybody and hear people's stories and. Yeah. So hopefully next week we'll have some more things for you. And have a good evening, everybody. Good night.
I hope you hear from Tanya, Margie.
Yeah, we hope so too. Yeah.
Connect with her.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
David.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Thanks,
See you next
Bye.
week.
David.